If you have this kind of like bulk of commission work, are you starting to generate thoughts about what your next film might be, or where are you at in the process of this? How it is that you might, because that's the way I kind of see your career. Is you have these kind of two aspects to it, right? Like you have these personal projects, and you find time for them. However, you find time for them in between this kind of commission work. Some of the commission work seems to resonate more. I mean, it seems in some ways, have you become the kind of like teller of myths and mythical stories and things like that? You seem to have a kind of niche here in a way.
Yeah, which is actually interesting that you bring that up because um, uh, it's another result of the success that Farrell had, or the exposure that it had. Because
Yeah.
up until that point, my career was definitely like a two-sided thing. I did cartoons
Yeah.
for money, and then I did my personal work for zero money,
Right.
and never the twain shall meet.
Yeah.
After Farrell, I started getting work that looked more like my personal work, where they wanted not just my hand to animate things, but also my design sensibility and the look and kind of texture and atmosphere of my personal work. So I would say that at this point, my career is actually on three different paths instead of two. So I'm still doing the commercial work because that's still what pays the best. That's still it's the easiest thing to do, and it's also the most lucrative. And also, I enjoy it. It's kind of fun to do bouncy cartoons. It's not something that's kind of like a toil or something. It's like, oh my God, what am I doing in my life? It's more like, oh, cool, I get to do a cartoon, and I don't have to think about all this heavy stuff.
Exactly.
And then there's the personal work, which is very complicated in terms of my emotions. It's something that it is infinitely rewarding and infinitely soul sucking at the same time. And it's something that I devote a lot of my emotional, psychological time to, and it's really what I feel is a calling. It's something that I can't abandon. It's something that I need to kind of pick away at it. And it's always kind of in the background, and sometimes I have the opportunity to bring it to the foreground. But because of life, you don't always have that opportunity. And then there's this third thing, which is starting to pick up a little bit of speed, and which actually I think is really interesting, which is marrying this kind of personal work with commission work. Every once in a while you get really interesting projects like Kapai Mahu, like Sacred Stories, and like Tigerland, where people come to me wanting my eye, and I can bring not just my hand to it, but a little, Kapaima, who is not my story, but I found a way into it. I found a way to express what we were talking about before, that kind of tension between the internal and the external.
Right.
I found a way to see myself in that world.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of find a way in, then the work becomes that much better, because
Yeah.
then you have a personal stake, a personal investment in telling that
Yeah.
message.
And are there any stories that are resonating with you now? Are you having
Yeah,
any
I'm sorry. I think I went off on a tangent, but that
No,
was
that
your
was a
original
fantastic
question.
tangent. Tangents are encouraged.
There certainly are. There's some stories. So there's two things that I'm kind of working on at the moment. One is something that I had started a while ago and kind of never went anywhere, which was basically I was running out of ideas. I didn't know what to do, and I thought, okay, why don't I just whenever I listen to music, I get all this imagery in my head, right? And it just kind of flows so naturally. So maybe I'll just make a music video. So I found a song that I really liked, and I started just making a music video for it. Without any, this is kind of closet art, right? With no intention of showing it to anyone. It's just for myself. And the idea was that, okay, I'll let the music dictate the plot of this thing, or if not the plot, it's at least the structure of this thing, because I love how music mirrors, or kind of any art form in a way, kind of has mirrors the structure of film, or mirrors the structure of writing, or even of life.
Right.
It's kind of like the hero's journey in a way, that there's an arc to it. There's kind of a midpoint. There's kind of a bridge in music. There might be a chorus. There might be, and there's a climax. So the music provided that structure, and I just had to kind of populate it with my imagery. And the idea was that the music was almost like little training wheels, where it would allow me to ride the bike, but then once I got the momentum going, then I could take the wheels off. And I'm not going to use this music because it's I never got in touch with the musician, and I don't have the rights for it. So I'm just going to drop the music, and I'm going to replace it with a new soundtrack after the movie's finished. So that was the idea. It never kind of panned out, and it's like halfway done. But I still really like some of the shots in it. So what I decided to do is start thinking of the shots as kind of standalone little scenes, or little loops. They're like 30-second little loops that I can just start putting out on social media or something. As just like on a weekly basis, or on maybe on a bi-weekly basis, just put out a new scene. So I'm working on that right now with Dan Golden, about coming up with some musical kind of moments that go along with the visuals. And that's the other thing too, because these scenes are kind of standalone, a little bit more abstract. They don't need the sound doesn't need to match up exactly. It doesn't need to be like sound effects. Dan has a lot more freedom now to also make whatever he wants to go along with it. So that's one thing I'm working on. And then in the back burner is a much more ambitious project, which may or may not be a feature. I'm not sure where it's going. Or a feature that's kind of compiled of, it's almost like an anthology, like short little films that speak to one another, but are not the same story, that have kind of a common thread running through them, a common theme, but I can either put them out as separate films or as one big film.
Right. Right.
So and it has something to do with regret.
Okay. It's a general theme.
It's a very, very general theme, but it allows a lot of room to explore things. There's a lot of things that are going into it, including quantum physics.
Oh, okay. That was a surprise.
Yeah. Isn't it always?
Yeah. Well, committing to a feature film that is animated yourself sounds like regret. I like a few of the people that I've interviewed have sort of echoed this thing where they're like, I'm kind of working on something that may or may not take up 100% of my time for the next 15 years. It's like, okay.
Yeah,
I feel that way too. I have that project also.
Yeah, well, it's okay. I mean, if you got to do something with your time.
Yeah. It's important to be ambitious. It's very important.
But hopefully it won't take that long. Like what I said before, like Feral took 5 years to make, but it really only took 5 weeks to make 1/3 of it.
Right.
And hopefully, if I can get my act together, I'm actually a really fast worker. If I know what I want. And once I get into that groove and that kind of momentum, I think I can do it in less than 5 years.
Yeah. And is this something you're just spending catch can time on, or are you dedicating?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever there's a gap between freelance projects, I try to chip away at it.
And how does that work for you? Like, do you miss it, or do you when you come back to it, it just feels natural to slide into it, or
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah, it's
being away from it.
Projects like this require a lot of momentum, require a lot of kind of getting into that headspace and into that groove. And the freelance projects interrupt that momentum quite a bit. They're good and bad. I mean, they're good in the sense that it allows me to build up that kind of potential energy. Like I really can't wait to get back to it, and I can formulate some ideas in the background and write them down, and then there's something that kind of is kind of ready to go as soon as I have the time. So that's the good part of it. The bad part of it is once I do have that time, then it's almost like it's reinventing the wheel. You kind of have to retrain myself on how to do it, how to rack my brain over to this other form of making, a new kind of daily routine, and readjust, and kind of the speed is different than in commercial projects. So it takes a lot of time to kind of reacclimate to that, and sometimes by the time you finally do, there's another project. They start knocking on the phone rings. It's like, oh man, I have to do this other thing now.
Yeah, and it's not so easy to go off to a 6-week residency with. I believe you have a 6-year-old daughter, right? So
not anymore. Not anymore. Not with a mortgage and a family. No. So you know the tax man starts knocking.
Yeah. Right.